What's up everybody, OJ here, and welcome to my lazy review of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now the reason why I'm doing a lazy review of this game is because I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. So what you're going to see is just footage from the very beginning of the game and maybe a little bit after that, but nothing that would be considered spoilers. So I'm not going to show you guys boss battles and all sorts of other stuff that would spoil those parts of the game. And I think that this is probably the best way to do it. You know, just show you guys footage, talk about it, and kind of go over what's good, because there's too many times that people just spoil stuff. In so many reviews, they say non-spoiler or I'm not spoiling things, and then they show you a boss from like the mid-game or from like the end of the game, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, you just said no spoiler. Or they show you something that the developers clearly didn't want you to see early before you play the game and that you lead up into it. So I decided that this would be the best way, which is a little bit lazier than what most people would think or what most people would want, but at the same time it protects you guys, the viewers out there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into my lazy review of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a landmark title for the PlayStation 4, and dare I even say the Breath of the Wild for Square Enix. And what I mean by that is that the game is going to fundamentally change how this series is moving forward. They have a huge hit on their hands here when it comes to it. The visuals, the presentation, the gameplay, all of these aspects have this nice balanced flow to it that really works well and has made this the most enjoyable Final Fantasy game for me since Final Fantasy X or Final Fantasy XII on the PS2. It's been a while since I've enjoyed a Final Fantasy game as much as I've enjoyed this one, and it kind of all works hand in hand, right? Like I talked about when it comes to the balance or the flow of the game. The presentation, when you have the sleek menus, the slick UI, you have the really cool overlays for like the spear grid type of upgrading system, the music, the sound effects, everything that kind of makes all the little things that you see kind of click and tick together on there. That's what Final Fantasy VII does really, really well. Final Fantasy VII Remake, I should say, does really well. If you're a fan of the previous Final Fantasy games, or if you're a fan of Final Fantasy VII, of course, in particular, you're going to absolutely love some of the little touches that they've done. Even stuff like having Barrett have the normal victory fanfare, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I mean, he does that in the game. It's very funny. So you're going to see little Easter eggs and little things in the presentation all throughout, and you're gonna love it for that, because I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy VII. My favorite Final Fantasy games are Final Fantasy VI and VII, so to see them kind of put this into this presentation like this is just absolutely phenomenal. And that leads into the visuals of the game. Man, is this game pretty. Seriously, like outside of the PS1 door that I saw and a couple blurry textures here and there, which, yes, you can kind of knock the game for that, but overall, this game is absolutely beautiful. It's stunning. Like, the skin texture that you see within, like, Cloud, Aerith, and Tifa, it's just amazing. Heck, even with Barrett or with other characters in the game, they're way more detailed than you'll see with just, like, typical standard NPCs. But all of the characters, the major characters in the game, just look absolutely mind-blowing. And the fact that they're able to get this game look as good as it does on a base PS4 is incredible. Now, I did play it on the PS4 Pro, so I do have better resolution and things like that over the base PS4. But from what I've seen from that, it looks just as stunning. And it clearly shows you that Square Enix took a ton of time thinking about the design, about the look, the feel when you see these characters and how they react. I mean, there's a lot of things to like. Now, there is a little bit of awkwardness with some of the lip syncing that I've seen in the game, but I'm so used to Japanese RPGs just having horrible lip syncing in general that this actually seems really good, or first class when it comes down to it. So for me, it's not that big of a deal, but for others, it might be a little bit of an issue. Now, let's go ahead and move into the story of the game. And once again, this is a lazy review, so no spoilers in this one here. But I want to talk about this because too many times I have these reviews that people have and they spoil the game. You know, they put in stuff that they shouldn't be putting in. Like I talked about before, we're not going to do that here. And the story is very satisfying. I will say that. It's very satisfying. You play as Cloud, who is a ex-soldier of Shinra, ex-soldier first class, so one of the top of the line. But he decided to walk out from Shinra, and he's going to meet up with his childhood friend Tifa and accepts a job with her and her crew that she runs with, which is the eco activist group Avalanche. And that's where you meet Barrett, Biggs, Jesse, and the crew there in order to bomb one of the Mako reactors that is sucking the planet dry of its natural resources, and the evil Shinra company that essentially runs as the government, the housing, and pretty much everything with it. So that's essentially the plot of the story. There's all sorts of twists and turns and new things that are added in. Even if you've played the original Final Fantasy VII, you're definitely going to want to check out Final Fantasy VII Remake for these new things added in. And like I stated before, if you stick it through like the whole way and play through to the end, and you look at like the story and everything and what they've done, you should be satisfied, especially if you like all of the Final Fantasy games, or if you know about the lore and the history. If you're into it, then you are going to be satisfied with this game, just like how I was satisfied with the story and everything. So very cool there. But let's go ahead and get into what the most important thing about any RPG is, and that is the gameplay. You know, obviously story is important and all that, but the gameplay is very, very important, and that's where I think Final Fantasy VII Remake shines more so than any previous Final Fantasy game, probably back to Final Fantasy VII or maybe even like 9, some of those ones, like is the combat and the gameplay. This game is incredibly fun to play. Now, Gone is the turn-based RPG system, and In is a brand new action RPG system. Now, it's not quite like Kingdom Hearts or like Final Fantasy 15. It has its own weighty feel to it, and I've talked about this before, but it feels like if BioWare, prime BioWare, like 2010 BioWare, right, at their peak, Mass Effect 2, when they were developing that, collaborated with Square Enix and the talent there, and they said, hey, let's make a Final Fantasy game. I think this is how it feels. It has a weighty feel to the characters, but at the same time, it feels like the impact and the blow, it's very heavy. When you slash somebody with Cloud, when you shoot somebody with Barrett's gun, when you knock people out with Tifa, everybody has their own unique feel that has a certain weight to it that feels very fun and very good to play. I mean, I had so much fun blasting through with Barrett and his guns. I felt like a soldier class on Mass Effect in terms of that. If you guys have ever played Mass Effect 2, for example, it's really fun, and Cloud is agile and also very strong, but the depth that Final Fantasy VII gives to you in terms of how you can manipulate the game in order to get results is great. You have magic systems to where you can have materia, you can imbue these gems on your weapons and give you powers that you didn't have before. You can use magic, or you can have access to new different types of combat options. And what they've done here is very ingenious in my opinion. Now, instead of giving you a normal level, like when you level up, you go to level 10 or level 11 and you get all your stat buffs. What they do is they give you points, and those points can be put into different weapons, and then you can level up those weapons, which in turn level up yourself. For example, with a certain amount of points, you can unlock 200 extra HP, or you can unlock +5 to your fire attacks, or just various different skills, or maybe even new materia slots so you can put in new skills or new magic. So it just works really well, and what makes this system ingenious in so many other RPGs, once you get a new weapon that's better than your old weapon, all right, well, there you go. That old weapon, essentially, you don't need that one anymore, and it's all done. But since they're doing this through the weapons themselves, and each of the weapons have a base value, and in terms of different spear grids that you can upgrade, it makes it way more fun. It makes it way better because you can say, hey, in this situation, I'm going to use this weapon because it's way better in magic proficiency. Well, in this situation, I'm going to go ahead and just use my standard Buster Sword because it's the balanced weapon that has more of the stuff that I'm looking for when it comes to how I want to play. So the way that they've actually put in that system, it makes you use all of your weapons. No weapon is basically useless in this game. Even the weapons that you get from the very beginning, like the Buster Sword or the original gloves that Tifa has, you can always get different weapons and you can mix and match in terms of what you want to do. But in any situation, any of the weapons can be useful. So I love that about this game, and it solves one of the major problems with a lot of RPGs out there, a lot of Japanese RPGs, where it's like, okay, well, once that weapon's there, it's done. All right, move on to the next weapon. This way, you can pretty much use any weapon at any point in terms of how you want to customize and you want to use it. Some weapons specialize in having a lot of defense, or specialize in having a lot of offensive power or magical power. It's just great how they did that, and it makes the gameplay just feel even better, like when you have certain attacks and skills with that. And another thing with the game is that you can actually have proficiencies. So each weapon has its own special skill that it can do, and as you use that skill, you'll actually learn it, so then when you use a different weapon, you'll have that skill from that. So essentially, you can just carry them all over to whatever weapon you use. fantastic system that they implemented in there, and that's why I said that this is probably going to be the basis for how Square Enix is going to do Final Fantasy games going forward. Almost like that pivotal moment, like for example Legend of Zelda, with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, they decided to do a sequel. This is how Zelda games might be built, you know, kind of going forward with it. I think they're going to continue going in this direction because the gameplay in this game is phenomenal. Now, while there are a lot of good things about Final Fantasy VII Remake, there are some notably bad things about this game that we definitely have to discuss, and that is the side quests in this game. To be honest, they're pretty bad. I mean, they're the standard Japanese RPG side quests, but even made worse in some situations. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some side quests that you're going to enjoy. There's some throwbacks to previous Final Fantasy games. There's some Easter egg stuff that you're really going to like. I enjoyed some of the side quests in the game, but a lot of them are just annoying, just like a lot of other Japanese RPGs. And I'll also say that even within some of the main quests, there's quite a bit of padding, even late into the game with the later chapters. There's one chapter that there was so much padding, I was just ready to turn off the game at one point. So much splitting up and kind of going back and forth. I was just like, man, this is not fun. And it's clearly evident that they were trying to pad the length of the game with the splitting up, with the going back and forth, with doing this and with doing that. And in terms of splitting up, that's something that I also necessarily don't like about the structure of the game. Outside of something else that we're going to discuss, is that you're constantly switching team members. You're constantly saying, okay, you're only having this team member that can fight. Okay, only these two team members that can fight. Okay, now it's this team member that can fight. Okay, now it's this one over here. I would like a more cohesive game, hopefully, which it does seem like whenever they do the next one, it'll be more cohesive in terms of who your party is and what you can do. But the splitting up all the time, pretty much with the exception of Cloud being the main consistency throughout that, necessarily isn't my cup of tea, but I understand considering what happened in the original game. Like, I understand why, but at the same time, like, not necessarily something that I love. And I'll also say that this game can feel somewhat claustrophobic at times when it comes to areas. It takes a while for the game to kind of open up to where you can travel between different areas and everything. And even what they do have here definitely seems like it's pretty small scale. Like, there isn't enough open area or open places to go, and just the structure sometimes of running into invisible walls, not being able to go to a previous area that you were before a certain point, also having it to where there's not really a lot of large or bigger open-ended areas. It just makes it feel like, man, they really kind of constructed and kind of put things down on pretty tight clamps when it comes to the freedom within the game, which I think might change in the future ones, but at the same time definitely did not make this game more enjoyable for me. So Final Fantasy VII Remake is absolutely worth it in my opinion. You should definitely go out there and pick up the game. Now, if I had a final score to give the Final Fantasy VII Remake on the PlayStation 4, I'm going to go ahead and give it a 9 clouds out of 10. I think they did a fantastic job on the visuals, the presentation, the gameplay. It all really just kind of leads up into this epic ending that you're going to absolutely love, especially if you're into the pantheos and the lore of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I was very satisfied with it. There were some issues here and there, which I did discuss, you know, when it comes to each part, whether it was visuals or presentation or even the gameplay, but overall the package is just way too good to ignore, and there's still plenty of content. I spent 50 hours plus in this game, and there's replay value as well kind of tied into it, like I discussed as well. So I think it's definitely worth it. So what are you guys' thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Remake, and what do you think about my lazy review of the game? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the link in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a like and a follow on there. Stay up to date on all the latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.